As soon as the telephones match up, we'll continue. So we learned about this man of Anachas Tefillin, about the time when you should put on Tefillin, and we learned that it starts from Misha Yakir, best if it's at Netzach Hamo, but it goes on until Shkia Sachamo. And we also learned that Shkia Sachamo is providing that the Chatchila should be Shkia. You shouldn't put on Tefillin after Shkia, but suppose somebody hasn't put on Tefillin and it is Shkia. So we also learned that you can put on Tefillin until Tzeis HaKichovim, but you do it without a bracha. So that's as far as we learned so far. What's that? So it depends if you're Makabel Shabbos. If you're Makabel, but if you're Makabel Shabbos, you shouldn't be tired. You shouldn't be, because you're Makabel Shabbos already. And Shabbos is part of Tefillin. It's not just an issue of the question of Bisman. It's the question of on Shabbos we don't put on Tefillin. Well, but if Reiv HaTzibur is Makabel Shabbos, which by it automatically becomes for you Shabbos as well. Yeah, before that it becomes if you're Makabel or not. But once Shkia comes around, then that becomes a question. Yeah.
What about I'm sorry, but on the other end, if before Mishiakar, is there budget there also?
Oh, so we said that before Mishiakar, we should not be putting on Tefillin. Well, although there is some Bidi Eved, there is a concept of putting on Tefillin even from this man from dawn, from Alish HaShachar, but that's a Bidi Eved. Well, if you do it then, you should do it without a bracha and make the bracha later on, correct? That is what we just said. You're busy asking. Yeah, no, he asked them, that's what I told him.
There's no way to do that. Okay?
What's that?
It's already weird. So you already, how do you make a bracha out? You already put on the Tefillin.
So you unloosen the kesher and you tighten the kesher again. Right. Correct. Yes.
They don't have any worse than them. They used to have it. So, a lot of time, you used to fill it on chocolates, and then like afterwards, you would say,
So that's where we see even the pandemic had some benefits. Okay. What's that? No. We're saying it's a bidi eved. It's not a lechatchila. And what they do is they make the bracha afterwards. It's bidi eved. That's why some shuls do it, but it's a bidi eved. It's not a lechatchila. Right, it's because you should be putting it on with a bracha. So you only put it on without a bracha because it's a bidi eved here. You don't make a bracha on a bidi eved. So it's still bidi eved. Well, it is because most minyanim that start that early make a bracha later on. They don't make a bracha at the beginning when they put it on when it's only bidi eved. Well, they know it's b'diavad, and they take the opinion because they have no choice. They have to go to work, and otherwise they won't have an opportunity to put on tefillin. So that's what they do. Well, there's a difference between b'di eved and an oinus. Not the same. Well, take a break in the middle of work. Again, we're not going into the specific. Anybody that has that question should inquire what to do. But as a rule, again, lechatchila, this man is either mishayakir or from Netzachamo, but not from Alois HaShachar. Okay. Bishabah says v'yamim tovim. What about Shabbos and Yontif? So here we have the question. We just had the question about Shabbos and Yontif. So Shabbos and Yontif ain't manichin tefillin. We don't put on tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif. Why? Why don't you put on tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif? So the reason is, and we said earlier, that's why tefillin is a mitzvah saseh shahasman grama. Remember, we said the only reason tefillin is a mitzvah saseh shahasman grama is because Shabbos and Yontif you don't put on tefillin. Because from the perspective of day and night, at night is a chiyuv of putting on tefillin. We just don't for other reasons. But Shabbos and Yontif is a manichin tefillin. We don't put on tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif. Neshenamar ala tefillin v'hoyo l'choli ois. With tefillin, the pasuk says that this should be for you la'ois as a sign. B'Shabbos is v'yamim tovim him atzmam ois. Shabbos and Yontif is a sign in their own right. And since there's already a sign of Shabbos and Yontif, so we don't add the sign of the tefillin. So that's why on Shabbos and Yontif, we don't have the chiyuv of putting on tefillin. K'mishenamar, as the pasuk says, ki ois hi beini u'bnei Yisrael. For Shabbos and Yontif, it says that this is the ois, implying that we don't do anything else that would add to that, such as putting on tefillin. Since this is the ois, this is the sign, we don't add any other signs, so that's why we don't do tefillin. Correct. And specifically it says, ki ois hi, this is the ois. So that's Shabbos and Yontif. Now the obvious question is what? What about Chal HaMoed? That's not Shabbos, it's not Yontif, it's Chal HaMoed. It's the intermediary days. So the Inyan Chal HaMoed nachliko apoiskim. This is a machlokes. There's a machlokes about Chal HaMoed if you should or shouldn't put on tefillin. If, as we said, Yontif and Shabbos is an ois in its own right, so is Chal HaMoed part of that ois as well? Just like Yontif is an ois, Chal HaMoed is also, it's chayil, but it's also moed. It's a weekday, but it's also a moed that has a yontif in it. So is it considered an ois or isn't it? So it's a machloikas. Our particular custom, the way Chabad does it is, we do not put on tefillin chalamayid. Even if one davens in a shul where tefillin is put on. So you might say that there's a concept of loisis goidedu. Loisis goidedu means that you shouldn't, the Gemara says this, goidedu literally it means don't make arguments. But loisis goidedu also means, the Gemara says, loisasu agudeis agudeis, that you shouldn't make different groups. In other words, one group doing this, another group doing that. So in the same shul, you shouldn't have different customs taking place in the same shul. So you might say, if I'm in a shul that puts on tefillin chal hamayid, I too should do it. But when it comes to putting on tefillin chal hamayid, that doesn't apply. And in that circumstance, you should not put on tefillin. And we don't have to be concerned about that issue because it's based on a machlokes, and it's a machlokes of the early sages. The Gemara actually brings it down, and as a result of that, it's not that you're making separate groups, it's going according to different opinions. It's not a question of a minhag that you're following one way or another, but it's based on that has sources and opinions and shas, and as a result of that, if you follow that opinion that says that you don't put on chal hamayid, so even if you're in a shul that puts on, you could not put on. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, that doesn't even apply in this because that's not really sort of what you might say a Torah minig. No, but that concept of Leisis Gaidu that we're specifically speaking about Torah law. In other words, where you're davening one way and another. This is the perfect example. Chalamoid. So we say normally this would be part of that, but because it's based on a halacha, so it's not considered this Gaidu. Different nischois. Different nusachos. So if there's the nusach of the shul is following a particular nusach, if there's a something that it doesn't really make a difference and you don't see it any different. In other words, if you're davening and there's a word that in nusach Ari it said this way, nusach svard it's another way, so you're saying it to yourself, so you're not really differentiating yourself publicly. But if there's let's assume there would be a halacha that there would be a question if you do bang the hishainu or you don't, and you're davening in a shul that does, and your minig is that you don't. So then, what is this going to do? So if everybody's doing it, you do it too. Well, because specifically here, this is following a halacha. It's not just a minig yisrael. No, sometimes there's minhagim that are not based necessarily on halacha, it's just a custom. And in this particular city, they did it this way, and the other city, they did it a different way. Halacha is that something that has a source in early halacha that you can do differently, and the concept of Leisis Gaidu doesn't apply. Well, we treat it with Mesiras Nefesh, that's no question, but at the same time, halacha says that with certain minhagim, there's a concept of Leisis Gaidu, so you shouldn't change it. Shouldn't change from what everybody is doing. In a Shliach Tzibur, that's a different thing. Well, that's not because of Leisis Gaidu, that's a different reason, and that's the reason because you are davening in a shul that does it this way, and they're Shliach Tzibur, so you can't do different than what they're doing. Otherwise, you can't be their Shliach Tzibur. No.
When would I be? What example would be that will go something that I would normally do if I go into any other shul in the world that I would have to give up something I do for this evening?
I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you a perfect example. Perfect example is in some shuls, they don't allow for their custom is that more than one person shouldn't say Kaddish. Our custom is that everybody that is a chiyuv says Kaddish. In some shuls, they have a custom where only one person says Kaddish. And there's reason for that, but that is their custom. So if you come into that shul and you say, no, I'm going to say Kaddish, I don't care what they say, my minhag is to say Kaddish. So there, it falls into the category, Leisis Gaidu. They have that minhag, don't change from what the minhag is and where you're davening now. No, because I'm talking davening for the Amid is the Shliach Tzibur. Saying the Kaddish, you're not their Shliach Tzibur to say the Kaddish. There's one person doing it. Again, davening for the Amid, you're being their Shliach Tzibur. If you're opening your own siddur and doing your own thing, you're not bothering anybody. But if you're saying Kaddish when they have their minhag, only one person says Kaddish, and their chazan is saying Kaddish, and you want to say, I'm going to say Kaddish anyway, because my minhag is to say Kaddish, even if there's 10 people saying Kaddish. So there, the same thing. So the same thing. So again, if they specifically have no problem with it, so say it. But if they tell you that in our shul we don't say it, and they have an issue, most shuls will tell you want to say it, no big deal. But if you come to a shul, and that would be the case if you go into a yekish shul that is very medayik and exactly the way they do it, and if somebody else does it any differently, they'll have a problem with it. So then, either you don't daven there or you do it the way they daven. Anyway, on that note, let's continue. You had a question? So somebody was raising their hand for a
What about
question.
the example that they say we go for apartment, we go to other children, they say in Shabbat, I don't know Ramin, I'm in Snewood, and they open the Echa.
So what's the question? Can't.
No, I mean, because no, he's going to do, we'll join them.
You could join them if you want. Nothing wrong with joining them.
Don't you? That's a perfect example of what you have to join.
So if it's going to make an issue by not joining them, then you're correct.
What about something that you're not allowed to sing?
If it's a hefsek, it's a problem. That's a different story. We're not talking about things that you should be doing. We're talking about. So that is not an issue of loisis goydedu. We're talking about things that you should do, that Al Pidin you should do, but there's different customs. That's a different issue.
Over here, have an achdus, and somebody separating themselves from
Achdus means achdus for doing dvarim shebekdusha. We don't, if you have two people fighting, you don't say, let's make achdus, let's all fight. Okay. Kedimas mitzvahs tzitzis lemitzvahs tefillin. Tzitzis comes before tefillin. B'sat fin tchila b'talis. First you put on the talis. V'rak la'acher kach manichan tefillin. It's only after you put on the talis that we put on tefillin. Mipnei shemitzvahs tzitzis hitadira yoser mitzvahs tefillin. Because again we have the concept of tadir v'she'eni tadir. Tadir means something that comes regularly, and she'eni tadir, it only comes on occasion. So in this case, mitzvah tzitzis comes regularly because sharehi neheges shivas yomim b'shavua. Tzitzis you put on 7 days a week. The ilu mitzvah tefillin mekayim rak b'mei achayil. When it comes to mitzvah tefillin is only in the week, as we just finished saying. And therefore we put on first talis and then we put on the tefillin. And also when you have your talis bag, you don't put the tefillin on top of the talis, but you have the talis on top of the tefillin. For what reason? So that when you open your talis bag, first thing you reach is the talis. So you don't have to be, as the expression is, ma'avir al ha-mitzvah. Ma'avir al ha-mitzvah means that you're stepping over a mitzvah. You reach the tefillin and you say, wait a second, tefillin, I got to do something else first. So instead of doing that, you have the talis on top of the tefillin. So you reach the talis first, put on the talis, and then you get to the tefillin. Because again, the reason we go to the talis first is because tadir b'she'eni tadir. So since this talis comes on a regular basis, it comes every single day, and therefore that comes first. And that's why we also set it up in a way that we shouldn't have to be ma'avir al ha-mitzvah. These are all phrases that come regularly in halacha. Tadir v'she'eni tadir, ma'avir al ha-mitzvahs. It's interesting things to keep in mind because you come across it a lot of times in halacha. Okay, it's 7:07.
Said about
About